0 inches necromancers? Upon hearing Xiao Ying's cry, Su Chong and the others couldn't help but turn around to look. The former's face was deathly pale as he looked at the 4 people in the cave with disbelief. Chairman Xiao, what are the dead spirit corpse guards? Seeing Xiao Ying's expression, Su Chong immediately asked in a deep voice. The 4 people who had crawled out of the coffin were really strange. What was even more terrifying was that if these 4 people could release the black qi, then the treasure would be gone. Xiao Ying regained his senses and took a deep breath. The fat on his fat face trembled, but his voice was still trembling as he said, I have read about it in an ancient book. Some powerful experts whose soul power is different from ordinary people will have strange changes in their bodies after they die. The origin monarch qi and soul power that had yet to dissipate would produce a kind of unconscious dead spirit under appropriate conditions. Their mission was to protect the dead. Therefore, they were called undead guards. What was even more terrifying was that these undead guards had the strength of the dead when they were alive. Even if they're not as strong as them, it's about the same. After saying that, Xiao Ying looked at the 4 undead guards in the cave with a bitter smile and said helplessly. Now, there are actually 4 of them. It seems like it's impossible to obtain the treasure of this Emperor Cultivation Warrior. Su Chong furrowed his brows when he heard this. He had never heard anything about the dead spirit corpse guards. Given his character, he naturally wouldn't believe everything Xiao Ying said. His eyes flickered slightly. He looked at the 4 dead spirit corpse guards in the cave once again. As the latter had been dead for many years, Su Chong naturally wouldn't be able to sense its strength. Therefore, he didn't dare to act rashly. After listening to Xiao Ying's words, the few people outside the cave fell silent. Only Lao Zheng's low and painful cry continued to echo. Kai! All of a sudden, the 4 death spirit corpse guards in the cave moved. Like a silent ghost in the night, they charged towards Su Chong and the others without any sound. Their pale faces were covered with blood-red eyes, making them look exceptionally ferocious. Witnessing the gang qis from before, Su Chong and the others were especially wary. They hurriedly perked up their spirits, and the origin monarch qi in their bodies surged wildly. As they prepared to fight, they were also prepared to escape. If these 4 death spirit corpse guards unleashed the gang qis from before, they could only run away when the opportunity presented itself. Buzz! A death spirit corpse guard pounced towards Su Chong. The latter's expression became serious, and with a flip of his wrist, a dark green longsword appeared in his hand. The hilt of the longsword was engraved with a mysterious pattern, and the entire longsword looked extremely ancient and grand. Returning to the sword, Su Chong did not dare to be careless in the face of an unknown strength of the death spirit corpse guard. He unleashed the spirit weapon monarch skill the moment he attacked. All the origin monarch qis on his body surged wildly and poured into the longsword in his hand. Numerous dark green gaseous lines surged out from it. They were like substance like gang qis as they smashed towards the charging death spirit corpse guard. Swoosh! The eyes of the undead guards that pounced on Chen Rong turned red. Its stiff body was unusually agile at this moment. Both of its palms were pushed out, and in an instant, several streams of stellar energy shot out from its body, whistling towards Chen Rong. Witnessing the power of the gang qis from before, Chen Rong broke out in a cold sweat. His body flashed, but his shoulder was still hit by a wave of gang qis. The expected broken arm did not happen. Chen Rong only felt a pain on his shoulder. Although the defensive armor formed by the origin monarch qi had been broken, and the clothes on his shoulder had been cut open, compared to the previous stellar energy, the attack of this undead corpse guard was clearly much weaker. Chen Rong was delighted. His fear of the undead corpse guard had been reduced by a lot. If he only had this kind of strength, he might still be able to defeat it. The spirit weapon monarch skill and the undead guard's ferocious attacks collided. Su Chong could only feel a tightness in his chest. There was no pressure that he couldn't withstand when he was fighting an Emperor Cultivation Warrior. Thinking of this, Su Chong glanced at Chen Rong, who hadn't suffered much damage. A bright light flashed across his eyes, and he let out a light laugh. It seemed like these undead guards had already lost the strength of an Emperor Cultivation after being corroded for tens of thousands of years. At most, they had the strength of an ordinary monarch emperor. Seeing that Chen Rong and Su Chong were able to withstand the attack of the undead guards, Lao Zhen's hesitant expression became firm. He put Lao Zheng aside, who seemed to have gotten a little better. Then, he moved his body and rushed towards one of the undead guards, his fury soaring to the sky. "Chairman Xiao, are you waiting there to watch the show?" After forcing back the undead guards with a single strike, Su Cheng's eyes swept across Xiao Ying, who was standing still not far away. He couldn't help but snort coldly, and his voice was filled with anger. Although the strength of the 4 undead guards was average, they would definitely be able to kill them one by one in a one-on-one battle. However, this wasn't the time to display his ability to help others. If they were injured in the battle, they would suffer a lot of losses while fighting for the Emperor cultivation treasure. Therefore, no one was allowed to stand idly by at this moment. Xiao Ying felt anxious when he heard this. The others didn't know about Xiao Yan's existence. He knew it very well, although these 4 undead guards were only Monarch Emperor level warriors. If they were injured, wouldn't that create an opportunity for that guy? Don't think that the 2 of them were working together. If they really reached that stage, even if they were brothers, they wouldn't have the slightest bit of hesitation when they attacked. Although he was complaining in his heart, Xiao Ying didn't show it on his face. A hint of determination flashed across his fat face as he reminded the guards behind him. Under Xiao Ying's cold gaze, the guard gritted his teeth and rushed forward to help Mu Lin, who was temporarily at a disadvantage among the 4 of them. Xiao Ying himself looked around the battlefield and his eyes flashed. He rushed towards Lao Zhen, who had the upper hand. Xiao Yan's heart skipped a beat when he heard the sound of intense fighting coming from ahead. He took a few big steps forward and hid behind a huge rock at the corner. He looked at the few people fighting not far away. When he saw who was fighting Su Chong and the others, he couldn't help but let out a surprised sound. He looked at those guys. They obviously didn't belong to normal human beings. Could they be the guardians of the tomb's owner? Since he couldn't figure it out, Xiao Yan might as well stay here and watch the show. After watching for a while, he couldn't help but shake his head. Although those strange fellows were very powerful, they were still able to withstand the cold attacks of Su Chong and the others. They could only lean against the wall. Lao Zheng, who had lost an arm, looked like. The last mechanism of the tomb's owner didn't seem to work either. Boom! Mu Lin couldn't help but sneer as he sent the dead spirit corpse guard flying with a single palm strike. He thought that these guys were very powerful, but it seemed like they were only at the early Monarch Emperor, and didn't know how to use the origin Monarch Chi. They only knew how to rely on their physical strength and the stellar energy in their bodies. As long as they were careful, it wouldn't be too difficult to deal with them. The eyes of the undead guards that were sent flying by Mu Lin's palm turned red as they expressionlessly looked at Mu Lin. All of a sudden, their bodies moved, and their incorporeal bodies flickered with an undetectable red light as they once again charged toward Mu Lin. Mu Lin coldly harumphed. The origin Monarch Chi on his right palm surged and a fierce aura was formed. With the help of Li Zhu and Xiao Ying's guard, it didn't take much effort to deal with this undead corpse guard. Kai! Mu Lin's brows suddenly raised the moment his right palm was about to strike the undead guard. His eyes suddenly turned to look at the red cracks on the former's incorporeal body that were like a spiderweb that crazily spread all over his body. Immediately, a sense of fear instantly emerged from the bottom of his heart. It was too late to dodge. Mu Lin's expression turned serious. He stretched out his hands and grabbed Li Zhu and Xiao Ying's guards beside him. Before the 2 of them could react, Mu Lin threw a punch at the approaching undead guards. Boom! After Li Zhu and Mu Lin touched the undead corpse guard's body, the dense red cracks on the latter's body suddenly shook. In the next moment, an ear-splitting explosion resounded in the underground cave, causing the surrounding walls to shake violently for a moment. Large boulders fell from the top of their heads, as if they were about to collapse. Before Li Zhu and Mu Lin could make a sound, the corpse guards had already turned into ashes. The huge impact caused Mu Lin's chest to feel stuffy, and he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood as he was sent flying, violently crashing into the wall beside him. He actually self-detonated? Upon seeing the scene just now, the few people who had reacted immediately felt shocked in their hearts. Their eyes began to have a dense fear. The self-destruction of one of their comrades didn't attract the attention of the other 3 undead guards. They acted as if they didn't hear anything and continued to launch fierce attacks at them. The fear in Su Cheng's eyes quickly dissipated. It wasn't as if there was no precursor to their self-destruction. As long as they avoided the red cracks on their bodies, they would be safe and sound. Li Zhu and Mu Lin were turned into ashes by the self-destruction of the undead guards. Mu Lin was also sent flying. He had suffered a serious injury. Under the fearless attacks of the 3 undead guards, Su Chong and the other 2, who each had their own ulterior motives, were unexpectedly at a disadvantage. Xiao Yan hid behind a huge rock not far away. He glanced at Mu Lin, who was flying backwards not far away from him. Mu Lin's chi was extremely weak and his face was pale. The self-destruction of the Monarch Emperor-level expert was not something that he could easily handle, even though he was only affected by the aftershock. He looked at the 3 of them who had fallen into a deadlock with the dead spirit corpse guards. Mu Lin gritted his teeth. These guys were as cunning as foxes. None of them were willing to use their full strength, fearing that they would be at a disadvantage. With his current strength, he might only be slightly stronger than Lao Zheng. At that time, he would definitely be in a disadvantageous position if he were to fight for the treasure. Thinking of this, Mu Lin's eyes flashed. He was still lying on the ground as he quickly calculated in his heart. At the same time, he secretly took out a pink medicine pill. He looked at it with a pained expression and swallowed it without hesitation. When the medicine pill entered his stomach, Mu Lin's face immediately flushed red, and his chaotic chi quickly returned to normal. Cao Ying moved his fat body to deal with the attack of the undead corpse guard in front of him. He merely used 80% of his strength to stop the attack. Hence, although he appeared to be in an extremely miserable state on the surface, the order in his hands was not the slightest bit chaotic. Out of the corner of his eye, he looked at Su Chong and Chen Rong. Like Cao Ying, the 2 of them didn't use all of their strength. While observing the other 2, they slowly moved toward the cave. However, no one dared to try to enter the cave. After all, the previous gang chis had left a deep impression on them. Lao Zheng and Cao Ying joined hands. Similarly, they fought a death corpse guard to a draw. They didn't have the intention to kill it quickly. Bang! When the battle reached a deadlock, a deafening shaking sound suddenly came from the stone cave. The people who were fighting were shocked and subconsciously looked over. The coffin of the death spirit corpse guards, which was originally crawling out, was now. A thick arm slowly stretched out from the coffin and grabbed the armrest of the coffin. A crimson seal instantly appeared on the coffin. As soon as the seal appeared, the coffin immediately let out an angry roar, as if the roar came from the land of the 9 underworlds. It caused everyone's hearts to tremble. Boom! Bang! His extended arm was flowing with magma-like blood. His 5 fingers formed a fist and ruthlessly smashed onto the scarlet-red seal. A drum-like sound rang out, as if it was ringing in everyone's hearts. The light of the seal dimmed intensely along with it. Threads of terrifying aura slowly flowed out from within, causing everyone's expressions to change. What's inside? Xiao Yan looked at the giant fist in the cave in shock. For some reason, when he sensed the chi flowing out of the seal, his heart suddenly became agitated without any warning. A trace of fear could not help but spread from the depths of his heart to his entire body. Su Cheng's face turned pale when he sensed this chi. This chi had actually reached the Emperor cultivation. We can't let that thing come out. Destroy the coffin, Su Chong bellowed. He was no longer in the mood to think about the treasure. If he allowed the unknown thing to break the seal, the only thing awaiting them would be death. In front of an Emperor cultivation warrior, a Monarch Emperor warrior would not be able to do much. With this thought, Su Cheng's aura changed. He unleashed all of his strength, and the dark green longsword shone brightly. The blade buzzed, and following Su Cheng's furious shout, it was like a sword from the heavens that could cut through mountains and rivers. It rushed towards the undead guards in front of it. The next moment, the light had already penetrated the chest of the dead spirit corpse guard. The dead spirit corpse guard's fist suddenly stopped. Its body was instantly covered with spider web-like crimson cracks. Su Chong cursed in his heart. His body flashed, and he rushed towards the distance. These guys were really giving him a headache. Even if he was killed, he would still have to self-destruct. At the same time that Su Chong roared out, Chen Rong was startled by the chi that was coming out from the seal. His instinct after being in star-severing mountain range for so many years allowed him to react immediately. Knowing that it was no longer the time to scheme, he let out an angry roar and unleashed all of his strength. In an instant, he had gained the upper hand. 4 Spirit Emperor Technique. After sending the Death Spirit Corpse guards flying with a single punch, Chen Rong's facial expression suddenly became serious. Both of his hands quickly formed a dazzling handprint, which followed the handprint. The Origin Monarch Chis around his body also began to surge wildly, resonating with the Origin Monarch Chis within his body from a distance. In an instant, 4 Origin Monarch Chis formed from spirit beasts took shape behind him. Xiao Yan, who was attracted by the aura that suddenly erupted from Chen Rong's body, couldn't help but be shocked when he saw the 4 spirit beasts. Vermilion Bird, Black Tortoise, Azure Dragon, White Tiger. The 4 spirits. He had also heard from his teacher that the 4 spirits were the holy spirits blessed by the heavens and earth. They were unimaginably powerful, but they had already disappeared in the divine ancient era. For tens of millions of years, as long as they were their descendants. Their strength had reached a terrifying level. They were the guardians of the forest domain, the azure ancient profound bird. It was only one of the hundreds of descendants of the vermilion bird, and the Xiao. Speaking of which, it could also be considered the descendant of the azure dragon. As for Chen Rong's monarch skill, it had completely condensed the image of the 4 spirits. Although they were small in size, the energy contained within their bodies surprised Xiao Yan. After the complicated hand seal was formed, Chen Rong let out a breath with a pale face. He pushed his palm forward. In an instant, the roars of tigers, the roars of birds, and the roars of turtles suppressed the sound of drums in the coffin. Kai, 4 brilliant lights shot out explosively like meteors. They penetrated the chest of the Death Spirit Corpse Guard without any hindrance. The movement of the Death Spirit Corpse Guard suddenly stiffened. The crack on its body had yet to appear, but it had already quietly vanished and turned into nothingness. What a powerful monarch skill! Su Chong, who was just about to leave the explosion of the Death Spirit Corpse Guard, saw Chen Rong's sudden eruption of powerful strength. His facial expression changed, and his pupils shrunk to the size of pinholes. Even an ordinary monarch arts would not have such power. Thinking of this, Su Chong looked at the trembling seal in the cave with a strange expression. Then, he looked at Chen Rong, who was gasping for breath. Boom! The undead corpse guards that were killed by Su Chong suddenly exploded. Another wave of landslide spread out from the center of the explosion. The entire cave shook violently. The huge aftershock of the explosion rushed into the cave, causing the light of the seal inside to become dimmer. Boom! Before the aftershock of the explosion faded away, the existence underneath the coffin tomb roared once again. It threw out a punch and the dim seal finally dissipated. Following a joyful roar, another huge arm extended out. A monstrous aura surged out like a tidal wave, causing the entire tomb to tremble. Not good. Lao Zheng let out a loud cry. He abandoned Cao Ying and appeared beside Lao Zheng in a flash. His expression was grave as he looked at the existence that was about to appear in the cave. His forehead was covered in sweat. It's over. When he saw the seal disappear from the coffin tomb, Cao Ying was shocked. He could sense the chi of an emperor cultivation. All the hairs on Cao Ying's body stood up. He and the others had already been locked down by the chi in the coffin. It was impossible for them to escape now. They had to survive. There was only one way left. Thinking of this, Cao Ying's expression turned ruthless. Immediately, he abandoned the undead corpse guards in front of him. The undead corpse guards remained expressionless as they chased after him relentlessly. Cao Ying smiled sinisterly. Since they had no choice but to fight, no matter who it was, they could forget about being the fishermen. Xiao Yan's facial expression changed when he saw Cao Ying leading the undead guards towards his hiding place with a ferocious smile. He then sneered and clenched his fists tightly. Sure enough, this guy didn't have a good heart. Arg! Following a furious roar that resounded across the entire underground tomb, the existence within the coffin finally crawled out from within. Its might intimidated everyone. The coffin was quickly corrupted by the destruction of the seal, and in the space of a few breaths, the bronze coffin was gone. When they saw the existence that broke the seal from the coffin tomb, Su Chong and the other two's expressions changed. This thing could not be described with human words. To be precise, it could not be described with human words. It was more like a ball of flame. There were no facial features on its face. However, there was a heart-palpitating gaze coming from somewhere, and its body was covered with strange patterns. There seemed to be lava flowing on his arms. Dark black flames danced on his arms like the god of death. Without legs, his body was just an illusion. His aura, which could suffocate people, spread out from his body. It was boundless. They didn't notice Xiao Ying's movement. Su Chong, Chen Rong, and Lao Zhen, who was protecting Lao Zheng, all had ugly expressions on their faces as they stared at Fireman who was in the cave. What is this thing? It actually has the chi of an emperor cultivation. Lao Zhen gritted his teeth and said bitterly. If it was on the ground, they could still rely on their many years of experience to deal with an emperor cultivation. If they were lucky, they could even kill him. However, under such circumstances, the three of them were injured to varying degrees. If they wanted to defeat this guy now, no doubt it's a pipe dream. While Xiao Ying was attracting the Death Spirit Corpse Guards to charge in Xiaoyan's direction, Xiaoyan's eyes swiftly flashed across Fireman's body in the stone cave. Xiaoyan clenched his teeth when he sensed the frightening pressure from Fireman. His body moved and he rushed out by himself. Who is it? Hearing the voice, Su Chong and the others immediately turned around to look. When they saw Xiaoyan, they were stunned. Anger flashed across their faces, and they were immediately replaced by joy. However, when they sensed the former's strength, they could only helplessly shake their heads. He. After getting used to the aura outside for a while, Fireman suddenly let out a horrifying laugh. After that, he turned his head to the Dead Spirit Corpse Guards following Xiao Ying. He gently raised his right arm and clenched his 5 fingers. The charging Dead Spirit Corpse Guards instantly stopped. Without making any sound, they had completely disappeared. Seeing Fireman's terrifying means, Mu Lin couldn't care less about his beautiful dream of fighting a snipe and a clam. He hastily stood up and stared at the former. His body quietly approached Su Chong and the others. At this moment, in the face of this powerful enemy, only by joining forces could they have a way out. If he continued to scheme in his heart, he would only die faster. This was something that Mu Lin, who had been living in this realm for many years, had to do. He knew it all too well. Xiao Ying's violent body suddenly stopped moving. Cold sweat broke out all over his body when he sensed Fireman's terrifying technique. He immediately took a deep breath. He said sincerely to Xiaoyan, "I'm sorry that I wasn't able to dodge in time just now. I rushed to where my young friend is." Xiaoyan sneered in his heart when he heard this. He could clearly feel the killing intent of this guy just now. Now that the crisis had been resolved, his facial expression changed immediately. Xiaoyan was ashamed of his shamelessness. Since this guy was pretending to be innocent, Xiaoyan was just pretending to be innocent. Now that the enemy was in front of him, he really couldn't waste his energy on this guy. "Kid, I don't know how you followed us here. But now, you can't run even if you want to." Su Chong stared at Fireman who was in the cave and said in a deep voice. At the same time, his brain started working quickly. Given the current situation, it was obviously impossible for him to obtain the treasure. If he found an opportunity, it shouldn't be a problem for him to escape. Before Xiaoyan could reply, Fireman suddenly let out a roar in the cave. With a sway of his body, he appeared in front of everyone. A palm of flame the size of a palm leaf fan whizzed past and sent Chen Rong, who was the closest to him, flying. Force locked. Cold sweat trickled down Su Chang's forehead when he saw this. With Chen Rong's strength, he could easily dodge this attack. However, under the lockdown of this mysterious emperor cultivation, he couldn't move at all. He could only watch helplessly as he was hit. Human. He. That bastard sealed his corpse inside before he died. His soul had left behind an obsession, allowing the 4 Death Spirit Corpse Guards to guard him, causing King to be unable to come out. However, he still underestimated King's strength. After so many years, King still came out. After sending Chen Rong flying with a single strike, a hoarse voice was heard from Fireman's body. Apart from anger, there was also endless killing intent in that cold voice. "What the hell are you?" When Fireman came out of the cave, the inexplicable restlessness in Xiaoyan's body became even stronger. The heart palpitations that were difficult to suppress quickly spread throughout his body. Sensing the changes in his body, Xiaoyan could no longer hold himself back and asked in a deep voice. Attracted by Xiaoyan's voice, Fireman pointed his face at Xiaoyan. Immediately, his voice sounded from all directions like rolling thunder. His voice was filled with surprise and excitement. "Your physique is actually the same as that guy." Everyone was shocked when they heard what Fireman said. They all looked at Xiaoyan, who also had a surprised expression. When the latter heard what Fireman said, he was also stunned. The guy Fireman was talking about should be the owner of this tomb, but what did he mean by the same physique? Could it be that he was also an alchemist? Your strength is much weaker than that fellow. However, there is definitely a heart flame in your body. If you devour it, King will definitely be able to recover his strength from 10,000 years ago. Fireman's tone was extremely excited. The flames on his body were blazing, as if he was going to burn the space into ashes. Heart fire? Ignoring the surprised gazes of the crowd, Xiao Yan's mind shook when he heard these two words. He seemed to have heard these two words somewhere before. Heart flame burning. The words of the Xiao clan's great elder suddenly appeared in Xiao Yan's mind. According to him, the fighting monarch in the lower realm would have to endure the pain of the heart flame burning when it broke through to the monarch emperor from the sovereign realm. If it couldn't endure the pain, it would turn into ashes and not even a corpse would be left behind. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan's head suddenly buzzed, as if he had understood everything. His eyes were filled with disbelief and shock. This fireman, could it be that the master of this tomb didn't stop when he was breaking through, and the heart flame burning in his body was formed from his heart fire? No wonder his body felt inexplicably irritated when Fireman appeared. It was probably because the hidden source of the heart fire in his body had been affected. This fellow was definitely the nightmare of all fighting monarch of lower realms. It seemed like the master of this tomb had already prepared this tomb before his advancement. If he didn't succeed, he would die. After thinking about this, the shock in Xiao Yan's heart lessened a lot. Although the prestige power spell had fallen into a dormant state, it was merely the chi and pressure of an emperor cultivation warrior. The effect it had on him was still very weak. Furthermore, under the detection of Xiao Yan's powerful soul power, this fireman, although he had the aura of an emperor cultivation warrior, his own strength, it seemed like he hadn't reached the emperor cultivation level yet. Lao Zheng glanced at Xiao Yan, then suddenly looked at Fireman and said in a deep voice, "It's our fault for intruding into this tomb. In that case, I'll leave this little guy to you. We can leave now." As he spoke, Lao Zheng's heart was filled with reluctance. Lao family had paid a huge price to collect the heavenly core. This time, one of Lao Zheng's arms was broken. However, when faced with this emperor cultivation level, he couldn't believe it. The few of them could win by joining hands. Although the treasure was good, their lives were more important. After hearing Lao Zhen's words, Su Cheng's facial expression changed, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he looked towards the direction of the cave. Chen Rong stood up shakily from the ground, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and didn't say anything. As for Mu Lin and Cao Ying, their expressions changed slightly when they heard Lao Zhen's words, as if they agreed with him. Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes when he heard this. He also did not say anything. However, there was an inexplicable bitter smile in his heart. Fireman's face had no facial features, and no one could tell what his expression was. However, his sneer caused Lao Zhen and the others' facial expressions to change drastically. "You want to go out? Don't even think about it. All of you are the best tonics for King's recovery." After listening to Fireman's gloomy words, Lao Zhen's facial expression turned extremely ugly. This guy really wanted to kill all of them. Ice Seal Tyrant Slash. The moment Fireman's voice faded, Su Cheng's body suddenly moved. The dark green longsword in his hand was pointed at the former. A cold light surged on the blade, and a chilling intent quietly emerged. A violent origin monarch chi appeared. Like a raging ice storm, the walls on both sides of the wall were covered with frost. Lao Zhen, who had recovered from his shock, let out an angry cry when he saw Su Cheng suddenly attack. Spiritual light surged from his hand and a powerful aura suddenly erupted. A huge golden palm had vaguely formed behind him. The huge palm whistled out and carried a wild and violent explosion sound. It was like a palm that could destroy the world. Golden Sun Palm. The huge fist shadow followed Su Cheng's sword light and rushed towards Fireman. Lao Zhen's face turned extremely pale as he thrust out his palm. The strongest monarch skill he had used with all his strength had consumed nearly 80% of his origin monarch chi. Lao Zhen had a strong confidence in this palm strike. Even a high-ranked monarch emperor level would have a layer of skin peeled off if they were unprepared to receive it. Although Mu Lin and Chen Rong were sent flying, they didn't hesitate at this moment. They exerted all their strength and unleashed their strongest monarch skill, hoping to severely injure Fireman. The pressure of facing an emperor cultivation level warrior was too great, and they couldn't afford to hold back at all. Xiao Ying's eyes flickered for a moment before he clenched his teeth tightly. His fat body trembled and majestic origin monarch chis appeared one after another. They slowly gathered above his head and formed a four-sided large seal. Following Xiao Ying's soft cry, the large seal was like a lightning that chased after the wind and chased after the moon. It rushed forward and pointed directly at Fireman. Xiao Yan naturally did not dare to be the slightest bit slow. After a slight hesitation, the monarch flames all over his body surged wildly and instantly formed a crimson gold flame armor. At the same time, the secret arts of heavenly monarch fire-burning body was activated. As a holy arts, Xiao Yan had yet to display its true power. However, with the help of the monarch flame, the heavenly monarch fire-burning body was still very powerful. In an instant, Xiao Yan's strength had skyrocketed to the emperor level. Fireman's emperor cultivation level chi had no effect on him at all. The moment Xiao Yan unleashed the heavenly monarch fire-burning body, 4 attacks landed on Fireman's body. After the attack was completed, Su Chong didn't hesitate at all. He turned around and started running back and forth. These attacks might have some effect on ordinary emperor cultivation warriors, but he had no confidence in dealing with this unknown enemy. Mu Lin glanced at Su Chong who had left, then at Fireman who had been submerged by the fierce attacks. Greed flashed across his eyes. With a flash, he rushed into the stone cave, aiming at the few brocade boxes on the stone platform in the stone cave. Go to hell! In the next moment, a fierce and furious voice suddenly sounded. Immediately following that, a red figure flashed out from the center of the explosion and caught up to Mu Lin in an instant. The red figure turned into a ball of fire and rushed into Mu Lin's body. Mu Lin, who was advancing, suddenly stopped and his expression became extremely ugly. After a few painful roars, his body suddenly exploded. In just a moment, Mu Lin had completely turned into ashes. At the center of Mu Lin's body, a strange flame slowly appeared. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the flame once again turned into Fireman. In his hand was an extremely pure origin monarch chi. That was Mu Lin's origin monarch crystal. Fireman had used a strange method to preserve it. Heart flame burning? Xiao Yan's heart shook when he saw Mu Lin's death. He vaguely understood that if the fighting monarch of lower realm couldn't resist the heart flame burning, it would. Mu Lin's body and soul would be destroyed, turning into ashes. Mu Lin's death fit this description. It seemed like this fellow had entered his body in the form of the heart flame burning, which allowed him to easily kill his enemy. The only way to survive was to completely refine it within his body. This way, he could be considered to have been killed. Chen Rong's face turned extremely pale when he saw that Fireman had killed Mu Lin with ease. He couldn't care less about the injuries in his body. Just like Su Chong, he crazily ran back to where he came from. There was no longer any fighting intent left in his heart. Lao Zhen's expression was also ugly. Compared to Su Chong and Chen Rong, his strength wasn't any weaker than the two of them, but in order to take care of Lao Zheng, his speed had obviously been slowed down. Although Lao Zheng had already stopped bleeding after losing his arm, however, the injuries in his body could not be healed in a short period of time, and the origin monarch chi could not quickly transform into his arm. Lao Zhen could only carry it on his back and rush towards the cave entrance. Xiao Ying's expression was cold. His body suddenly turned, and before Xiao Yan could react, he was struck by a palm towards Fireman. With the help of this force, Xiao Ying's fat body seemed to be very agile. After a few leaps, he had already left this place. The flames on Fireman's body burned brightly, and his joyful laughter echoed throughout the tomb. In the next moment, Fireman's body suddenly spread out, transforming into 6 streams of dark black flame. Like lava, they pierced through the air, and in the blink of an eye, they had caught up to the fleeing people. The dark black flame trembled slightly, and then pierced through their bodies. A stream of dark black flame also entered Xiao Yan's body. When the flame entered his body, an indescribable burning sensation came from every part of his body. It was as if his entire body was melting. Endless pain spread through his entire body, and waves of pain rushed into his mind. Woo! Xiao Yan's eyes immediately turned red. Dark black smoke was emitted from his skin, and it seemed like he was going to turn into ashes and disappear. Arg! Along with a blood-curdling scream, Xiao Yan laid down on his stomach. Lao Zheng, who was on Lao Zhen's back, couldn't bear it any longer. His body silently turned into a pile of ash and dissipated into the air. The moment it dissipated, a pure origin monarch chi returned to Fireman's hand. The moment Lao Zheng disappeared, the scarlet-faced Lao Zhen let out an unwilling roar in his heart. Then, he turned into a pile of ash and disappeared from the world. When the serene black flame entered Chen Rong's body, the latter immediately let out a furious roar. His eyes were red as his left hand transformed into a blade and cut off his right arm from his shoulder. Blood instantly flowed out from his broken arm. Chen Rong could not care less about the pain. All the origin monarch chis in his body surged into his body, trying to force the dark black flame out from his broken arm. Woo! After only holding on for a moment, Chen Rong suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. After persisting for a few steps, his body still turned into a cloud of ash. The origin monarch crystal that stored the origin monarch crystals also returned to Fireman's hand. When Su Cheng's furious roar reached Xiao Yan's ears, he felt as if everything in his body had melted. His consciousness became more and more fuzzy. Heart flame burning. As the biggest obstacle to the fighting monarch of Lower Realm, countless geniuses had fallen because of it. Regarding this, other things couldn't help him at all. He could only rely on himself to resist it, but with Xiao Yan's current strength, it was impossible to resist the heart flame burning that could kill an emperor cultivation warrior. Oh woo! Just as Xiao Yan's consciousness was about to disappear, a dragon roar that resounded in all directions suddenly sounded out from within his body. In merely an instant, the burning sensation that caused Xiao Yan to wish that he was dead had completely disappeared. Seeing that Xiao Yan had yet to turn into ashes, Fireman could not help but let out a surprised cry. When he saw that the latter's expression had returned to normal, he could not help but feel even more shocked. After that, he let out a cold snort. His entire body turned into a raging flame and entered Xiao Yan's body at lightning speed. He was only a monarch spirit, so killing him was a piece of cake. At this moment, Xiao Yan's eyes were tightly shut. Within his body, the awakened Xiao Ao was like a soaring dragon horse. Two flames were circling around his body. One was golden, and the other was crimson red. Under the two flames, the Xiao Ao raised its head and stared at the serene black flame that had entered Xiao Yan's body. The flame was like a fire dragon, and it was also staring at the Xiao Ao. The dark black flame was like a maggot attached to a bone as it rushed towards the Xiao Ao. The Xiao Ao did not want to be outdone. The two monarch flames turned into two fire wings and attached themselves to its body. It carried the Xiao Aos and rushed straight towards the fire dragon formed by the dark black flame. Xiao Yan's body was stiff in the air, and he could not intervene at all. He could only close his eyes and watch the battle between the two within his body. The two of them turned Xiao Yan's body into a battlefield. The flames were violent, and the flames were explosive. The horse and the dragon collided fiercely. The flames around their bodies collided like meteors. Brilliant lights overflowed in all directions, and besides this magnificent scene, there was also a hidden death. After sensing Fireman's strength, the nervous expression on Xiao Yan's face eased up a little. Although it was the spirit of heart flame in the body of an emperor cultivation warrior, it had been sealed for 10,000 years, and it had already worn down his strength. Now, it seemed like the spirit of heart flame only had the strength of a monarch emperor warrior. However, Xiao Yan's relaxed nerves immediately tensed up. Although the spirit of heart flame had lost a lot of its strength, it still had the strength of a monarch emperor. As for the Xiao Ao, it was merely the strength of an emperor. Even if it had extraordinary talent, with the help of two monarch flames, the chances of it winning in a battle with the spirit of heart flame was just too small. Another round of violent bombardment. The Xiao Ao was easily sent flying by the spirit of heart flame. With the help of the fire wings, the Xiao Ao barely managed to stop its body. After which, it widened its eyes and shook its big head. It furiously looked at the serene black flame in front of it. The flames that had entered Xiao Yan's body earlier were only a small part of it. It easily dispersed the flame, but when faced with the true form of the spirit of heart flame, the strength of the Xiao Ao was somewhat limited. I never thought that you would actually exist in this brat's body. Looks like I'll have to expend some effort to get rid of him. A pair of crimson eyes slowly appeared in the center of the dark black flame. A strange light flickered in those eyes, and a gloomy voice sounded out from somewhere. It was quite strange. Although the Xiao was furious when it heard this, it couldn't speak a word. It roared, and two fireballs suddenly formed in front of it. As the Xiao roared, one after the other, the fireballs rushed towards the nether black flame. It's actually a monarch flame. What a good kid. Even that guy in the past didn't manage to master a single type of monarch flame. I never thought that you actually have two types of monarch flame in your body. But this is even better. When the time comes, I will devour your source energy, and King's strength will definitely return to its original state. He might even be able to break through to the monarch cultivation. Within the dark black flame, the pair of eyes were filled with joy. After that, he raised his dragon claw, and a dark black shield instantly appeared. Within the shield, a dark black vortex slowly flowed. The fireball that struck it was like a stone bowl that was as vast as an ocean, and it didn't budge in the slightest. Go and die for King. The spirit of heart flame easily blocked the attack of the Xiao. It scattered the shield and suddenly extended its two dragon claws. In an instant, the dark black flames swarmed towards the Xiao from all directions, completely wrapping around it. The Xiao's reaction was not slow. By the time the dark black flames swarmed over, it had already released its control over the two monarch flames. After the monarch flame broke free from the control of the Xiao, it swiftly merged into unknown crimson gold flame. The crimson gold flame trembled slightly and transformed into the shape of unknown Xiao. After the dark black flame wrapped around the Xiao let out a squeal. It flicked its small hand and a beautiful fire lotus with a long fire tail rushed towards the spirit of heart flame. It struck the latter but did not cause any damage. After tightly wrapping the Xiao within, the fire dragon formed by the spirit of heart flame sneered and looked at the Xiao in the sky. You really have a lot of tricks up your sleeve. However, King is a kind of invisible existence. There is no monarch skill that can harm him. As soon as his voice faded, the fire dragon twisted its body and appeared above the Xiao. Its dark black dragon tail lashed out with all its might, sending the Xiao flying. Along the way, Xiao's flew in all directions, causing Xiaoyan, who was powerless to do anything, to feel a sharp pain. Owu, being tightly bound by the dark black flames, the Xiao was unable to break free even if it exerted all of its strength. Its eyes became incomparably red, and a scorching hot breath was spat out from its nostrils. Amidst the furious neighing of the horse, there was actually a faint trace of a dragon's roar. Too weak. Compared to that fellow, your strength is too weak. With King's current strength, he would be able to easily kill all of you. At that time, he would be able to restore his original strength. There will definitely be a place for King in this world. The fire dragon roared towards the sky and let out a terrifying laughter. When it saw the struggling Xiao of the Lao family, it let out a human-like sneer. The dragon's body moved and rushed towards the Xiao. Halfway through, it transformed into its true form and entered the Xiao's body in an instant. Seeing this scene, Xiaoyan's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. This fellow had entered the Xiao's body. It was obvious that he wanted to use the heart flame burning to turn the Xiao into ashes. Xiaoyan's heart was bleeding at this moment, but he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of powerlessness from the depths of his heart. He couldn't help this battle at all. He could only watch helplessly as the situation developed. The spirit of heart flame entered the Xiao's body. The Xiao's struggling body instantly stopped. In the next moment, a painful roar was suddenly heard. Its body was struggling stiffly, but it was swallowed by the dark black flame in the blink of an eye. Xiaoyan felt his mind go blank. When he saw the Xiao being swallowed by the dark black flame, he felt as if a huge mountain was pressing down on his heart. He couldn't breathe for a long time. In a trance, this was the first time Xiaoyan felt so powerless. The scene of him being with the Xiao flashed in his mind. This was the last memory left by his teacher. Now, Xiaoyan's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. His forehead was already covered with sweat, and there were some tears at the corners of his eyes. The scene just now had made him unable to let go of it. The pain in his heart almost suffocated him. Although it was difficult to accept, Xiaoyan gritted his teeth and closed his eyes. The most important thing now was to think of all ways to defeat the spirit of heart flame. Otherwise, Mu Lin and the others would end up like him. Currently, Xiaoyan's body was in a mess. The Xiao struggled as it rose into the air. Its small face was filled with helplessness. It really didn't know what to do with this illusory existence that didn't fear any attacks. The netherworld black flame continued to burn, and the hissing sound of the Xiao gradually weakened. It was like a candle flame in a fierce wind that could be extinguished at any time. Xiao Yan forced himself to calm down. The situation had already reached the brink of collapse. If he didn't take any action, he would completely collapse, and the result of that would be death. Kai. The serene black flame continued to shrink. It continuously entered the Xiao's body. The hissing sound of the Xiao finally disappeared. At the same time, the trace of connection between Xiao Yan and the Xiao suddenly disappeared. Wu! Forcefully suppressing the grief in his heart, Xiao Yan furiously cried out. His soul surged out from between his brows. This time around, he did not attack the enemy outside his body. Instead, he turned the spearhead and aimed it at himself. Since the spirit of Heart Flame was unable to defeat him with an ordinary monarch skill, Hong Long. If he was lucky, perhaps he would only be injured by the soul fragment. Roar! Just as Xiao Yan gathered his soul energy and was about to attack his body, within Xiao Yan's body, in the dark black flame, a dragon's roar suddenly resounded throughout the entire tomb. In the next moment, a fiery light soared into the sky. In just a moment, it had broken through the restriction of the dark black flame. Within the fiery light, a scarlet golden fire dragon raised its head and let out a long roar. It was at the stomach of the fire dragon. The dark black flames were constantly struggling. Surprisingly, it was the true form of the spirit of Heart Flame that had entered the Xiao's body.